1986 was a tumultuous year in our history, to say the least. The Space Shuttle Challenger exploded 73 seconds after it lifted off from Cape Canaveral. US aircraft attacked 5 terrorist locations in Libya. The reactor at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant explodes, immediately killing 31 people and with cloud contamination reaching the rest of Europe. But all this meant nothing to the people of Ballyrowan, a suburb in South Dublin, Ireland. A young boy has vanished into thin air, walking back to school from his lunch break. No witnesses, no leads, and 38 years later, no answers for the family and friends left behind. Welcome to the story of Philip Cairns, the timeline of his disappearance, the theories on what happened to the young boy, and what bad things thinks most likely happened to the 13-year-old. Philip Cairns was born on September 1st, 1973. According to his family, friends and teachers, Cairns was a very religious young man. According to his mother, Mrs. Alice Cairns, he was very quiet and we never had any problems with him. He was a normal, friendly type who liked to go on fishing trips with his father. Teachers at his Catholic boys' school, Coláiste Íona, characterized him as a very happy child, popular locally, anxious not to cause trouble, and devoted to his family. Philip was the youngest of 6 children. On the afternoon of October 23, 1986, Philip disappeared while walking back to school from Rathfarnham, a south side suburb of Dublin. After Philip did not meet up with his friend after school, his parents and authorities were alerted. In descriptions given by the Garda Síochána, the National Police and Security Service of Ireland, Philip was wearing his school uniform and carrying a green canvas satchel when he disappeared. The Garda asked people to keep a special watch for his faded grey canvas school bag, which he may have discarded. Philip's school bag was discovered 6 days after his disappearance by 2 girls, Orla O'Carroll and Catherine Hassett. According to official accounts, the bag was found around 8 p.m. in the laneway between Anne Devlin Road and Anne Devlin Drive. One of the girls had passed through the laneway several times earlier in the day without seeing the bag. The lane had also been searched extensively by Gardaí several days earlier without finding any trace of the bag, according to a report. The bag appeared quite mysteriously, the Gardaí said, and we believe there may be a sinister motive behind this. Investigators thought that Philip's school bag may hold vital evidence, but no one knew how it ended up in the lane. In addition, police claimed that Philip's bag did not exhibit any signs of dampness or moisture, even though rain had fallen throughout the day and in the morning. The bag was forensically examined, but no clues were discovered. Philip's usual school implements were found in the bag, including pens, pencils, a copybook, a mathematics textbook, a school diary, and his pencil case. Yet several of his books were missing, including a geography book and 2 religious study books. According to writer Geraldine Nyland's Sunday Independent investigation into Philip Cairns' disappearance, Philip was given and accepted a ride back to school by an adult man close to him who he knew and respected. According to the report, Philip was approached at the intersection of Ballyrowan Road and Ballyrowan Crescent and accepted the ride since he knew the man would be going that way anyway. The adult man drove him towards the school, but did not drop him off. According to Nyland, the man lived and worked in the area. According to another allegation in 1989, a female anonymous caller to the Gardaí hotline claimed to have spotted Philip speaking to a man on the road back to school. The man was said to have grey wavy hair and to be clean-shaven. He is also said to be driving a red wine-coloured Japanese automobile with license plates ZU and 7. The Gardaí believe this may have been the final sighting of Philip alive. By October 30th, the Gardaí knew that they had a kidnapping on their hands. The Gardaí took over 30 statements from boys in Philip's class and 8 from his teachers. By November the 2nd, the Gardaí stated that hopes were fading for Philip's safe return. At this point, the case started to get weird. Philip's family started getting phone calls with a heavy breathing coming from the opposite end of the line. Investigators traced one call back to someone who claimed he dialed the incorrect number. A company in Tallaght was also said to have gotten a call from a 15 to 16-year-old boy saying he ran away and could not return home, and asked for someone to apologize to his family on his behalf. There were also reports of Philip being seen in Wexford, Tipperary, and on a bus going towards Tallaght. The uncanniest coincidence throughout this case was the discovery of 26-year-old Brendan Houlihan on November 7th. Houlihan was discovered dead in the Royal Canal, wearing just his underwear and vest, with a part of his shirt stuffed into his mouth. Houlihan was the sacristan, a person in charge of sacred items in the church, at the church where Philip Cairns was baptized. The parish priest was quoted as saying, "By tragic coincidence, it emerged that shortly before he went missing on Wednesday night, November 5th, the dead man had been checking the church register to find out the baptismal date of missing Rathfarnham schoolboy Philip Cairns, who had been baptized there. But was it a tragic coincidence, as the priest said?" The religious aspect of this death is most likely the motivating reason the Gardaí started looking at an alternative narrative for the disappearance of Philip. As early as November 3rd, some members of the Gardaí started postulating a theory that Philip was somehow involved in a religious sect. When asking why and how this theory even started, one needs to look at the backdrop of a mass hysteria narrative that engulfed the 1980s. The Satanic Panic was, and still is in some circles, a moral panic caused by over 12,000 unsubstantiated cases of satanic ritual abuse, or SRA, also known as ritual abuse, ritualistic abuse, organized abuse, or sadistic ritual abuse, which began in the United States in the 1980s and spread throughout many parts of the world by the late 1990s and continues to this day. Michelle Remembers, a book co-written by Canadian psychiatrist Lawrence Pasder and his patient and future wife Michelle Smith, which used the discredited practice of recovered memory therapy to make sweeping lurid claims about satanic ritual abuse involving Smith, sparked the panic in 1980. The claims, which later spread throughout much of the United States, featured accounts of people being physically and sexually abused in the context of occult or satanic rituals. Allegations in their most severe version include a worldwide satanic cult conspiracy involving the affluent and privileged, in which children are abducted or bred for human sacrifices, pornography, and prostitution. In this climate of a perceived evil threat, many cases of missing children worldwide were seen as proof of this now primarily discounted theory. In Philip's case, the Gardaí would say, it has not yet been established if any youngsters were involved in any bizarre or sinister religious ceremonies in the fields near Philip's home. Another report of the same day said the Gardaí were investigating a religious sect angle, in particular, organizations which might be involved in teenage abductions. By November 4th, the Gardaí ruled out theories that Philip was abducted or died at the hands of a sect or cult. The religious sect theory was put on the back burner by the Gardaí for now. Just 9 days later, it was reported that Gardaí were once again looking at the possibility of abduction by religious sects or cults. The satanic angle has been widely discredited as a practical theory due to no credible evidence or suspects. Several combined Garda and public searches for Philip were conducted in the Dublin mountains. It was alleged that keys and clothes belonging to a man were discovered during the search, and he was brought in for questioning by the Gardaí. However, he was released as it seemed they were left there while he was out jogging. Many local parents had also come forward with reports of their children being approached by unknown men trying to coax them into cars. After 30 years, countless prank calls, admissions, and recollections of witnessing the disappearance, a workable suspect came to the Gardaí and the public's attention. He wasn't part of a fantastical satanic cult, but was part of a genuine problem in Ireland. Eamon Cook is what Bad Things thinks most likely happened to Philip Cairns. Cook died on June 4, 2016. 6 days later, a woman came forward with information saying Eamon Cook may have been responsible for Philip Cairns' death. Eamon Cook wasn't a name the Gardaí hadn't heard before this testimony. Neither were some of his acquaintances. But let's look at Cook's history, or rather rap sheet, first. 1950. Cook detonates a pipe bomb near the O'Connell Monument in Glasnevin Cemetery. 1957. Cook is sentenced to 5 years in prison after pleading guilty to firing at 4 Gardas when they were inspecting a parked car in Wicklow. 1966. Cook established the pirate radio station Radio Dublin, which he ran part-time while working as a TV and radio repairman. During this time, Cook took part in unsanctioned police operations and patrols in the Kilmainham neighbourhood of Dublin on a nightly basis, installing a CB radio and a blue flashing light in his Jaguar and using the call sign Alpha 7 to report the movements of stolen vehicles in Dublin's A district while pursuing and ramming stolen vehicles himself. 1974. Cook meets Siobhan Kennedy McGuinness, then 7, whose family lives near his Inchicore home. His sexual abuse of Siobhan and a number of her female companions begins after a period of grooming. 1978. The Gardaí searches Cook's house in January and February of 1978. Cook was convicted and fined in the district court in March for violating the Broadcasting Act. Staff at Radio Dublin revolt in April when Cook's sexual assault of Siobhan is revealed. A tape of Siobhan testifying about her abuse is made and sent to the parish priest, who notified Siobhan's parents, but the case is not pursued further on the recommendation of the priest and 2 general practitioners. Cook appears on air to deny the charges. Father Michael McCleary, a Catholic priest, is hired as a DJ by Cook. Cleary also denies the claims levelled against Cook. The Gardaí conducted another raid on Radio Dublin in December. Cleary would later have 2 children with a 17-year-old girl that he may have groomed for years and had first-hand knowledge of rampant sadistic sexual abuse of young boys by one of his subordinates in Ballyfermot, Dublin's largest parish at the time. 1984. Cook and 4 other men were accused of hurling a petrol bomb at John Paul O'Toole's home, a former Radio Dublin employee who had been spotted with Cook's ex-girlfriend and the mother of Cook's child. 1986. Cook, who pleaded guilty to plotting the attack on John Paul O'Toole, requests that no jail term be imposed since he could suffer a great financial loss if radio licensing legislation is introduced. Cook receives a 4-year suspended sentence at the Circuit Criminal Court on November 3, 1986, after his defense lawyer said that a jail term would cause Cook's radio station to disappear and that Cook could lose in excess of £100,000. 2002. Cook is convicted of sexually assaulting Siobhan Kennedy McGuinness and 3 other women. All of the women were under the age of 15 when the abuse started, and one was as young as 6 when it began. The abuse occurred between 1974 and 1989. Cook was not prosecuted in connection with the alleged assaults on 2 abuse victims because a psychologist decided that they were not sufficiently terrified of Cook to warrant delaying reporting the abuse. Cook later wins his appeal against his conviction. The appeal is allowed on a technicality and a retrial is ordered. 2007. Cook's retrial begins after the acquittal of his sexual assault charges in 2003. He was convicted again and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Cook died at St. Francis Hospice, Raheny on June 4, 2016, while on temporary discharge from Arbor Hill Prison. This brings us back to the woman who came forward with information saying Eamon Cook may have been responsible for Philip Cairns' death. She said Cook knew Philip and had offered to take him to the radio station. A fight broke out when she was in another room at the station, and she believes Cook hit Philip with something. She later discovered Philip on the floor, bleeding and unconscious. After that, she passed out, and when she came to, she was in a vehicle that Cook was driving. Her account was considered believable by detectives. These events are alleged to have happened on the day of Philip's disappearance. Some sources said that a number of aspects of the woman's story have been substantiated, and it is believed that Cook verified some of the information. It is believed that Cook told Gardai he had met the schoolboy. It is not known if he verified other aspects of the woman's story, another source added. According to an official Garda spokesperson, aspects of the statement were confirmed. The woman who provided information on Cook came forward in 2011 due to the 25th anniversary appeal and gave a statement to Gardai in May 2016. Cook was spoken to by Gardai many times before his death, but due to his medical condition and the fact that he was receiving palliative care, he could not be adequately questioned or interrogated. He gave yes/no answers and, to a limited extent, confirmed aspects of the woman's statements. Cook did not say where Philip's remains are buried, one report would say. The Gardai announced on June 12, 2016, that there were 3 strands of DNA on Philip's luggage that police would check to determine whether they could match Cook's DNA. These strands did not, but Cook was not ruled out as a suspect. The Sunday Mirror newspaper said that they received word from a source that Cook was part of an alleged paedophile network operating out of a pub in the Rathfarnham area in the 1980s. The source described the network as an open secret at the time, although it is not believed the bar proprietors were aware of it. The network is said to have come to the notice of Gardai as a consequence of the 25th anniversary call for information about Philip's disappearance. Cook was allegedly part of the same paedophile network as priest Bill Carney, who died while awaiting trial on 34 allegations of sexually assaulting 8 boys and 2 girls over a 20-year period. According to the statement given, the woman who accused Cook kept her secret because she was afraid of Cook or because she was worried that he would be released from prison. According to the Sunday Times, Cook owned plots of land in the Dublin and Wicklow Mountains that he used to install towers to transmit radio signals from Radio Dublin. Dr. Julian Boone, a respected forensic psychologist, has said that Gardai, probing the missing schoolboy's ties to the serial paedophile, must start digging up property he owned. He went on to add that he would encourage authorities to dig up a parcel of property owned by the child abuser, a site in Stepaside where he had hidden a 20-foot container. This was not the only underground structure Cook had built on his properties. One source said Cook owned land and property in Sligo with underground bunkers and passageways. They said he owned property in Rathfarnham in the mid to late 80s. He owned property in Inchicore too. Under land he owned in Sagat was an underground container. He has 13 acres in Sligo on derelict land. Cook had a house in West Dublin too, which had an underground bunker in it. Most of the properties or land he owned did. He had a tunnel system under one of the houses he owned in Inchicore too. God only knows what he had them for. Irish criminologist Professor John O'Keefe said, "From those who knew him, he has been variously described as a vile, evil, violent, psychopathic individual who, if he did not kill, was certainly capable of killing. He was also a paedophile, which would of course put him firmly in the frame. Eamon Cook's profile alone suggests he is a prime suspect in the disappearance of Philip Cairns. He will have had no conscience or remorse at any point during the abduction. All of this evidence may be circumstantial at best, and the only confirmation would be a solid eyewitness or a confession from Cook himself. Cook may have admitted to the murder of Philip Cairns in a disturbing message uncovered after his death. A handwritten note discovered in a Dublin storage facility was allegedly given to the Gardai by a Cook family member 2 days after the 79-year-old died in a hospice. Detectives investigating the cold case tried to ascertain if the message discovered in June 2016, which says its author was "sorry for what I did to Philip," was referring to the 13-year-old. According to a source close to the Cook family, hundreds of videotapes, microdiscs and papers, along with the message, were discovered in the West Dublin storage facility. A member of his family came across one of his storage units and they were going through it and came across a letter that said, "Sorry to Philip for everything that happened." It said Philip used to love math and geography in school and how much he loved his trips to the radio station. He was saying his son Philip in parts of the letter, but he never had a son called Philip. It was written in 2004 or 2005. The second the person realized what it was, they handed it over to Gardai. There was no address on it. It was just a handwritten note he wrote in prison. It's believed he may have placed it in the storage unit after he was released, after his first abuse case collapsed, or when he was out on bail following the charges. The letter was found 2 days after the story came out about him being connected to Philip, a couple of days after he died, the insider said. According to the source, the child abuser, known to his victims as the Cookie Monster, was a peculiar man who used to go out with shovels to dig up property, claiming he had gone to bury his beloved dog. The family didn't own a dog. What was he doing with the shovel? What was he doing digging? At the time, nothing was thought about it, but looking back, it was strange. According to the source, if Cook killed Philip, he was most likely behind other murders. They said Cook must be investigated for other missing children cases in areas and places he would have visited. He used to go up to Northern Ireland 2 or 3 times a year too. The insider also wants the Gardai to inquire into the pedophile's finances. They said Eamon Cook had a hell of a lot of money. You have to ask where it came from. The belief is it came from a pedophile ring. He used to go to the pub every couple of weeks, despite never drinking. You have to ask why. He was close to being a millionaire. He had land and property everywhere. The Philip Cairns case highlighted the historical problem of sexual child abuse in Ireland. The number of civilian and religious pedophiles walking the streets in Dublin at the time of Philip's disappearance is staggering. Many of these abusers were well known in their communities and were seen as trusted role models. Philip could have fallen prey to any of these predators, but the Cookie Monster, Eamon Cook, is by far the most credible suspect out of all these monsters. If you love our content and want to support the channel, feel free to check our web shop where you can find exclusive true crime merch brought to you by Bad Things.